is Thursday, August 20th, and this is Commissioner's Conversation on topic. Our topic for today is caring for our community's children. I am John O'Grady, President of the Board of the Franklin County Commissioners, and we started these online conversations back in April to provide our residents with direct information and assistance about the assistance that's available during this outbreak, safety tips, and other useful information. We think these are important because the numbers keep getting worse by the day. We've gone from the state's very first coronavirus case being discovered in March in Ohio on March 9th. And today, as of today, there's been over 112,000 cases with more than 3,900 deaths statewide now. Franklin County continues to have the highest number of cases in the state. We have 20,000 cases in Franklin County, and we've had almost 550 deaths. Unemployment claims have reached more than 1.5 million during this pandemic, which is more than the state of Ohio has seen in 2017, 18, and 19 combined. Today, I wanted to devote this entire hour to focusing on the ways we can help Franklin County's children. We all know that the stress has been tremendous on all of us, and children are not immune to that stress, especially our most vulnerable children. My guests today are Kevin Greenwood, Franklin County Deputy Director, Survivor Services, Michael Daniels, the Director of Justice Policy and Programs, and Susan Brown, Director of Child Support Enforcement. We welcome all of you today to Facebook Live, and we always try to answer as many questions as we possibly can from those that are watching. So if you are watching us live on Facebook today, please go ahead and submit your questions. We will try to get to as many of them as we can. I should also mention that while my guests today, which is unusual, my guests today are all in their offices, which is really good stuff. I commend all of you for being in your offices. Usually my guests are not in their offices. I am not in my office. I am in my living room, and I have my dog sitting next to me. She's also not being monitored or being paid attention to by anyone other than me. So she may interrupt us, and I will apologize in advance for that, because she is a pistol. And if somebody's walking down the street or something's going on, she might interrupt us. So anyway, my three guests today are all devoted to caring for our most vulnerable children in our community, and have done much during this outbreak to assist and protect our youth. Susan, why don't we start with you? As the Director of Child Support Enforcement Agency, I imagine parents either are quite familiar with your agency, while many are probably familiar with it, or some might not be familiar with it at all. Can you tell the viewers about the work that CSEA does, as it is commonly called?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner O'Grady, and thank you for inviting me today. From a programmatic perspective, the Child Support Program provides services to establish legal parenthood, or we call it paternity establishment, or the establishment of legal fatherhood. We work with both parents to establish support orders or the transfer of funds from one parent to another to support their children if parents are not living together or they're separated. And we also provide case management services to track child support payments and collect current and past due support. Our case management could last from anywhere from 18 to 20 plus years. From a more practical perspective, the Child Support Program has evolved in its history from being a traditional, sometimes punitive collection agency to a program that now partners with parents, provides services and supports in employment, training, parenting programs, and other resources so that parents are better equipped to support themselves, their families, and to be an engaged, positive role model and mentor to their children, which ultimately benefits the whole community. Admittedly, for parents who don't show for their hearings, who don't respond to their mail or their case manager, and actively avoid supporting their children, the program does use persuasive and enforcement techniques to collect support. However, this is a remedy of last resort and not first instance. I don't think generally people realize the scope of the child support program. It impacts 1 in 4 children in Ohio and nationwide. And in Ohio, the program serves over 1 million children, which includes over 669,000 custodial parent mothers and over 54,000 custodial parent fathers, and 126,000 plus caretakers, third-party custodians, such as grandparents. Locally, we have 74,888 cases, which serves 115,297 clients and 86,307 children. And we serve by ensuring that they have the financial resources to thrive. The child support program has more interaction with fathers for a longer period of time than any other program except for the Department of Rehab and Corrections. So this gives us tremendous opportunity to provide resources, supports to parents to continue to provide, and again, to provide them over a long period of time.
Thank you, Susan. So Michael Daniels is not only an advocate for our most vulnerable children, he's been an advocate for protecting victims of human trafficking, those who have been justice involved, and our LGBTQ community. He's the director of Franklin County's Policy Justice Policy and Programs Unit. Michael, tell our viewers about the agency's work.
Thanks, Commissioner, and thanks for having me today. Our department is somewhat unique in the country, thanks to you and your colleagues and the vision that you have had. We're one of a handful of justice departments throughout the nation that report directly to the Board of Commissioners. We have colleagues who report through the court system or through the sheriff's office or other places, but we're one of just a very few who report through the Board of Commissioners. And as such, we have a look across the entire justice spectrum. So we're looking at what can we do to provide victim services in terms of Violence Against Women Act funding for victims of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, regardless of gender identity. We also are looking at the services that we can provide to abused, neglected, and dependent children through CASA that Kevin will talk about shortly. And then on the other side of the house, on the justice program side of the house, we use a mixture of different sorts of grant funding, federal government funding that comes to us from formula, a lot of grants that we compete for and have been successful in landing, as well as state money and some private foundation money to put programs in place across the spectrum to increase the number of folks who can be diverted from incarceration and into mental health and substance use treatment. Programming for folks who are inside the jail so that they can change their way of thinking, change their habits, change their people, places, and things. So we interrupt their recidivism patterns. And for folks who are incarcerated for extended periods of time, perhaps at prison, and they're coming home, to try to make sure that we have programs in place to catch them when they get home, to help them reintegrate into their family, their neighborhood, their community, and also to give them second chances at things like jobs, housing, and other basic needs so that they can continue then to integrate into the above ground economy and not be forced back into sort of the black market economy, which would come with leaving them with just scarlet letter. So our job is twofold. We look at folks who are people who have committed crimes who deserve a second chance. And on the other side of the house, we look at folks who are victims of crime and try to make sure that we're running a continuum for both of those folks in a fair and equitable and socially just way.
Thank you, Michael. Before we move on to Kevin, I do want to jump in real quick. We have not a question, but a comment from Alicia Johnson. She's asking a question, or she's making a comment on something not necessarily directly involved with what we're talking about here, but she does want to know where are our mailboxes. Alicia, I appreciate that comment. That is certainly a topic that is very timely. It's something that the folks on this particular Facebook Live program will know that I have been hot on and pursuing for the last for a while, not just on mailboxes, but all of the election related issues for a while now. The mailboxes, well, at least we've got the president now and the folks at the USPS indicating that they're not going to get involved with any of that for the foreseeable future, at least between now and the election. So while the mailboxes, I don't think are going to be replaced, they are going to be left alone and tamper-free between now and the election. So let's get back to the topic at hand. Kevin, let's get to you now. Let's walk us through a quick overview, if you can, I know you can. Walk us through a quick overview, if you would, of CASA, what CASA did, how volunteers have been helped, and what would have happened if the county didn't take over the agency, and how many children had been helped by CASA, and then let the viewers know of any coming changes that they might see.
Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioner O'Grady, and thanks for this opportunity. CASA and its movement actually has its start back in 1977 in a courtroom in Seattle, Washington. There was a judge that at the time was hearing domestic cases involving abused and neglected children and was very concerned that maybe he didn't have the whole story. And it weighed heavily on him that he made the right decision. And so he wanted to gain as much information as possible and was concerned that maybe some of the attorneys that were assisting had such a heavy caseload, they were not able to do that. So he decided that he would gather a group of community volunteers, train them, swear them in as officers of the court, and then send them out as guardians to report back to him on these children. So he held a public meeting, he issued an invitation, he expected 6 or 7 people to attend, and he got 30. And from that point on, CASA started to spread across the country. CASA Franklin County was established in 1991. And to make sure everyone understands the acronym, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And these are just what the judge had in mind, community volunteers who are trained and sworn in as guardians ad litem and then go out and advocate for these children. In 1999, here in Franklin County, 250 of our CASA volunteers provided advocacy and a consistent presence for 882 children who are currently in the Franklin County juvenile court system as abused or neglected. The timing for our becoming a county department could not have been better. The process actually started over a year ago when the CASA board was doing some long-term strategic planning and realized the challenges that lay ahead. The rising cost of health insurance and the growing overhead involved with running a nonprofit, coupled with an ongoing reduction, especially in federal funding of programs like ours, and began discussing with the county. We've had such a great relationship with the county and the Board of Commissioners and the courts over the years, began that dialogue. And here we are a year later in the midst of a pandemic. And because of that merger, we have not missed a beat in our service to the community. We've been able to maintain virtual visits. We are working on the hearings as we always have. And that has really been a testimony to the work being done by Michael and the rest of our team in OJPP, the commitment of the commissioners and the county, and the work of a great group of people, a great CASA team that I'm privileged to be with.
That's wonderful. We're glad. It's a great story. We're glad that you're able to be a part of it. So we've all felt that added stress during the time of the pandemic, whether it's financial stress, medical stress, or the additional responsibilities that have come with the additions of all these things during the pandemic. We've got homeschooling going on. It starts next week. I've got 2 here at the house. senior and a seventh grader, but you guys see families who've been struggling with for some time. How has this added stress of the pandemic affected these local families? Any of you want to start with this?
I know for one thing, Commissioner, that we've seen a really dramatic drop in the number of reported cases of abuse and neglect in Franklin County. And none of us are naive enough to believe that abuse and neglect has stopped. It's just that we don't have those mandated reporters who are seeing our kids on a regular basis. And so we're just kind of holding our breath right now and trying to put into place the operations and procedures that we're going to need for when we expect that other shoe to drop, when children are again being seen by teachers and coaches and physicians, and those cases of reported cases of abuse and neglect begin to climb again.
And I think, Commissioner, looking at larger across the family structures, the same thing. We have not seen an increase. In fact, we've seen a slight decrease in reported cases of domestic and intimate partner violence, but the cases that we are seeing have a higher degree of severity. And so when people are cooped up and they've lost their job and there's all of those anxieties and pressures, the kids are used to getting them fed twice a day at school. And now you have the added complication of how do you afford that? And how do you do that at home? Stresses build up. And so people explode or they self-medicate with alcohol or other drugs. And then that leads to its own destruction. And so we are seeing those familial pressures build up, not only among the intensity of, like I said, those domestic violence and intimate partner violence cases, but also there's been a direct correlation in the number of overdose deaths that we have seen since the COVID pandemic broke out, with the social isolation, the increased pressure of, again, folks self-medicating, and then the added complication of not being able to access services such as Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous and to meet with peers. And so people feel even more isolated and alone, and those pressures are very hard to deal with. And it's not just people who are in active addiction or recent recovery. We're starting to see it among folks who have been in longer term recovery as well. So certainly those pressures are something that societally we have to keep our eyes on, and why it's so important to follow the instructions that the commissioners leave us with at the end of every meeting. And that is, go check on somebody today, go make a phone call, go stop by, go just say, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Do you need a coffee? Do you need a cookie? What can I do? Just to let them know that you care and give them a way to have some sort of, you can be socially distant, you can socially distance without being socially distant from people. And I think that those connections are what's going to hold us through this.
Yeah, the term socially distant is I think is the wrong phrase to use right now. We should be distant. We should be making sure that we're distant, physically distant, but not socially distant. Being socially distant is the wrong thing to say. We should be socially relevant to each other. We should be socially important to each other. We should just be physically distant from each other.
Right.
We've been hearing, as commissioners, we've been hearing all kinds of stories about, domestic violence that's going unreported because, people are locked up with their abuser, basically, just because we're all at home nowadays. We're all spending more and more time with each other, and people are feeling as though they don't have any place to go. They can't report the abuse because if they report the abuse, their abuser is in the house with them, and there's no place to go because we're all so feeling as though we're also locked down. Children that aren't in school, therefore, they're not getting fed as frequently as they would be. And now with these, extended, remote learning situations that we're all dealing with, we had a forum last week where we had conversations with our public health professionals, both our Columbus Public Health Director and our Franklin County Public Health Commissioner, along with the school superintendents for all the districts in Central Ohio, representing all the districts in Central Ohio. But we also had on the call Matt Habash from Mid Ohio Food Collaborative, and Joy Bibbins, our Director of Job and Family Services, and folks from Adam H, because we wanted to be able to talk about childcare. We wanted to be able to talk about feeding kids when they're learning remotely. We wanted to be able to talk about mental health issues with our superintendents, because when kids are learning remotely, parents need to know how they're going to be able to deal with childcare. Families need to know how they're going to be able to deal with mental health issues, and we need to know and understand how we're going to be able to feed these kids when they're not getting fed at school, because there's some of these families just can't provide the types of food at home that they're going to be able to get at school. And so these are all big issues that we're all faced with now, that in normal times we wouldn't be faced with. And so lots on the plate here, lots on the table. Susan, what kind of things are during this, is your agency faced with that during the pandemic, with added stress that your agency is dealing with?
Well, this has been going on for a long time, and our staff and our clients are feeling the pressure of COVID-19. And as you know, the child support program is a temperature gauge of the economy. So, along with people not being able to pay their child support, they're also dealing with issues of, housing and transportation and food. And it's just a really, really tough time for them. And we have to adjust our services appropriately to the situation. Regarding domestic violence, oftentimes people are reluctant to come into child support and establish an order if there's domestic violence involved in the relationship. And I would just like to say that we have robust safeguards for people that would like, maybe their way to get away from that domestic violence is to be financially more viable. I would suggest, when people can and they can do so safely, to contact the child support program for some help, because we find that people that are in domestic violence situations, they could use child support if they could procure it safely.
That's great. So all the offices here that are represented, all three of your offices, do a lot for the residents of Franklin County. Let's take a second and highlight some of the programs that you guys represent. So, for instance, Susan, we just extended a Parent's Voice, a pilot program that blends parenting and employment help. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, that's kind of the next generation of child support programming, and as I said in the beginning, that demonstrates the evolution of child support. The Journey of Parents' Voice is a child support-led early intervention pilot program that does provide a blended curriculum of parenting classes and employment supports at the parents' point of entry into the child support system. It's a partnership between agencies, including Action for Children, Goodwill Columbus, Jewish Family Services, and Job and Family Services, to assist non-residential parents in gaining fatherhood services, support, and information, along with employment guidance as they navigate the system. The goal of the program is to provide supportive services to clients and to encourage responsible parenting, so that they can financially support themselves and their children and avoid the accumulation of deep child support debt. And we're doing this early in the program to try to break the cycle of that deep debt, especially in low-income zip codes. So the pilot has focused on fathers, but this fall we'll be looking forward, and we're excited about enhancements to include services for non-custodial mothers as well.
Michael, thank you, Susan. Michael, First Step, Pathways, The Help in Whitehall, others?
So we have made modifications to some of our programming due to COVID. So some of the things that we were doing where we were holding monthly gatherings or doing some of the in-jail congregate programs, those have changed slightly. And our services have become much more, I think, focused on one-on-one direct services for right now. But we continue to provide mental health and substance abuse counseling services for folks who are inside the jail and linking them to services upon release. We have a grant to help children of incarcerated parents that we are just now getting off of the ground, specifically to target fathers and their 11 to 17-year-old children. We have the Violence Against Women Act funding for victims of domestic and intimate partner violence, and a host of other things that we're supporting that help to keep the jail population down, particularly important in this time of COVID, including supporting work release, supporting outside training, supporting electronic monitoring, and a variety of other things that give alternatives to the court that they can feel safe putting people into programming and not just warehousing them inside the jail.
So I appreciate that, Mike. Kevin, CASA has been well respected for decades now. What, if anything, will change with the care of children now that CASA is part of county government?
I believe wholeheartedly that now that we're a department of the county, it provides us with an opportunity for future expansion. As a nonprofit, resources can be very limited. Becoming part of the county opens up funding and grant opportunities for us that we simply didn't have access to before. And one of the things that's very simple about CASA to understand is that the more volunteers we're able to train, the more children we're able to help. And so I think all of us here are really excited about that possibility of being able to reach out to the community and train more volunteers and provide that consistent presence for kids. And if I can, I'll just make a shameless plug at this time. If anyone is interested in learning more about becoming a CASA volunteer, please give us a call at the office. It's 614-525-7450. Or you can visit our website, learn more, and there's even an online application. And that website is casa.franklincountyohio.gov. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to make you a part of our team.
Well, that's awesome. We'll repeat those, or put those that number and your contact information on the Facebook Live feed so that folks can remember that. You mentioned once that maybe the agency might be able to help more children. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. It's just a matter of being able to recruit more volunteers in our community. And we're trying to do that by increasing our outreach, by being more present on social media, by trying to get out into the community at different, what we call tabling events, where we have an opportunity to share our information and our mission, just to get out there as much as we can and to get the word out. So I would encourage, again, our viewers, please help us share that mission. You can like us on social media, share our posts. Anything we can do to make CASA better known is going to help the kids in Franklin County.
Gotcha. Well, I want to remind our viewers that you still have plenty of time to submit questions through Facebook. To that end, Jackson Jolie wants to know what have you guys experienced about the resilience of your colleagues, clients, and customers. Anybody want to start with that, Susan? Your clients, colleagues, and customers. What have you noticed about the resilience of them?
Well,
You guys think about that.
huh?
I was going to say, two guys have to think about that answer while you're.
Yeah, well, since I'm first, I'll take my colleagues. I think first and foremost, I feel so very fortunate to be living and working in Franklin County and working for the Board of Commissioners that we do. The board has been so proactive in so many areas to help people navigate this crisis. And I read an article that I mentioned in one of our meetings the other day about true leaders are born in crisis. And how you respond to this crisis and how you maintain the calm and resiliency of your staff really shows who you really are, as a community leader. So that being said, very, very strong support from our county, but I would also like to give a plug for our staff, how resilient they've been. And, when this pandemic first hit, I was mentioning to one of my colleagues here this morning, it was kind of like being thrown out of an airplane and you had to sew your parachute on the way down, and it's really, we really had to mobilize quickly, but now, during the pandemic, we've taken all this time to really change our operational procedures and moving toward being more fully productive telework. Because when this first happened, we just didn't have the equipment, the technology, really anything to do that. And the patience of the staff, and navigating through this, the passion that they have for the program and the services that they're providing to clients in the midst of all this, in the midst of everything they're dealing with with their families, has been, truly admirable. So I'm proud of the staff. I'm proud to work in this county, and if you have to be anywhere in a pandemic, this is a great place to be.
I'd echo Susan that our colleagues and our staff are amazing. They've doubled down without thinking about it and really dug in. As it relates to the folks that we serve, we've seen an uptick in some issues, as we said, regarding violence. We've seen some perhaps the upticks in overdose or increase in substance abuse usage. But by and large, the clients that we serve across the justice continuum, Commissioner, are pretty tough people. And they have continued to be pretty tough people, and they'll figure a way to get through this. And I think the relationships that we have forged with them, and the way that we have approached serving folks with justice involvement, they know that we're walking right along beside them, and they know that the weight on our shoulders is heavier and that perhaps the mud's a little bit deeper, and maybe the hill's a little bit steeper. But we are continuing to walk beside them, and Franklin County residents are very resilient people. And they will pull together and they will get through this, and we will be right there, not leading them, not pushing them, but walking beside them, and making sure that they can continue to have those experiences and those opportunities that they deserve, even if it takes us a little bit longer to get there.
I'd just like to say what Susan and Michael said, but I'll add a little bit to that. Resiliency is really a word that we treasure a lot at CASA, because it describes very succinctly one of the greatest qualities of the children we serve and of our volunteers. There was a study a few years ago from the Harvard Center for Youth Development, and it talked about resiliency, and the key factor of resiliency being that one consistent presence in a life, especially in a child's life, can make all the difference. And we see it day in and day out. children enter the foster care system, they may have several caseworkers, they may have several foster homes, they may have several attorneys. We try and provide the consistent presence and believe that that helps them to get through that and to be resilient in the face of so much change and so much interruption and so much frustration. Um, that's why we need the volunteers that we need, and that's why we recognize their value in truly changing a child's story and helping them build the resilience to get through some awful situations.
Gotcha. We'll have a couple more comments and questions, and then we'll move on. First, frequent watcher and commenter Griffin Glaze wants to let us know that he is doing lots to protect residents of Franklin County by washing laundry with sanitizer and entering the back seat of Ubers and Coda buses on a regular basis. Caroline O'Connell wants to encourage people to consider volunteering for CASA. It's a fulfilling role that she's done for the past 5 years.
Indeed.
So she is a big supporter. Susan, the pandemic has wreaked havoc on businesses and, of course, many workers. How has this affected parents' ability to pay their child support? And in these cases where someone who has been paying child support has lost a job, how do you handle that?
So, yeah, as we've mentioned, child support clients have really been struggling financially. We know that because we see the data in the increase in unemployment rates, in the claims, and the number of clients that contact our agency. We also know that families are struggling with mortgage and rent payments and utility bills and even having enough food to eat. The current economic situation has impacted parents' ability to pay support, and that's something we understand. We encourage those who have been impacted by layoffs and closings to contact our office by phone, email, or the web portal to provide an update about their situation, and to be referred to one of the many great programs we have available in our office and available in our county and community when that would be appropriate. In these types of situations, communication is key to get in touch with us. Since March, the state of Ohio has suspended the releasing of default notices, which are issued at the time that a parent is over 30 days behind in their child support payments. We're looking at cases now on an individual basis to determine the best way to manage that case. Again, our options in case management do include connecting parents to our partners, such as employment services, job and family services benefits, and other community services. So by and large, we have scaled back enforcement efforts, understanding that our families are going through tremendous challenges right now. And so the best thing that someone can do is contact us, and we'll help them through their situation.
Gotcha. So can residents still come downtown to your offices, or what's the best way to contact your office if they need to?
So right now, due to the continuing threat of exposure to the virus and for the safety of our staff and our clients, our office hours are limited. Our cashier's booth and window is open from 8 until noon. So we're still accepting payments during those times. We're also seeing clients during normal business hours who have appointments for genetic testing. And we're communicating to our clients to contact our agency by phone, email, or through the state customer service portal. So they can visit our website at support.franklincountyohio.gov for all of the contact options.
All right. So, all right. Can the three of you point out the points on your website that can help residents? List them. We've got. We're gonna put them in the online chat. And make it easier for viewers to be able to access them. But, like for CASA, it's CASA FranklinCountyOhio.gov, correct, Kevin?
That's correct.
And there's, let's see, FCCS is Franklin County Children's Services FranklinCountyOhio.gov. The Center for Family Safety and Healing, we're going to put that in the online chat as well, which is familysafetyandhealing.org. ODJFS, we'll put theirs in, which is just jfsohio.ohio.gov. We'll put that in there. The directions for youth and family, we'll put that in. St. Vincent's Family Center, we're going to put all of these websites in the online chat for folks. Our website, we're going to put it in support.franklincountyOhio.gov. It has information about the hours and process changes that are due to COVID-19, which will encourage residents to reach out to and use, for phone, a web portal, email, all the, instead of stopping into the office. We strongly encourage clients to use a statewide portal. So all that information is going to be listed in the online chat. And I want to encourage the viewers to continue to send in their questions. I think we all may be in agreement that calling 2020 a challenging year may be an understatement. Doesn't mean that we haven't had some benefits, though, from this year. What, if any, are the positive impacts over the last 5 months on your agencies? I know here, we generally have tried over the years, we're raising our 4 kids to have dinner together as much as possible. Kids have, tons of homework. We still try to drag them together for dinner every night. But with sporting events and different band competitions and different things going on, we still try to drag folks together as much as possible. But I know that families having dinner together, families talking more together, families interacting and doing things more together is one thing. But what other things can you guys think of over the last 5 months that have been positives within your agencies, or other things that you can think of as well?
Commissioner, we had been laying the groundwork for several years through the Stepping Up Initiative and others of looking at, are there ways to take people who are currently incarcerated, who do not pose a danger to themselves or to the community, but who were there because of an illness, an addiction, or a minor nonviolent crime that might better be served somewhere else. And we'd done the groundwork for this. We had plowed a lot of ground and laid out what we thought were the best policies to take a look at. We thought it would take us a couple, 3 years to get all of those implemented. COVID fast-tracked everything and allowed us to implement those at breakneck speed and simultaneously. To that end, we have taken our average daily jail population from over 1,950 people a day down to less than 1,500 people a day, and we're not done yet. And so what that's shown us is that we have been able to take 30% of the people who were sitting in the jail, get them out of the jail without having an adverse effect on public safety. There were naysayers across various industries who were afraid that if we changed bail, if we let folks out, et cetera, that there would be a dramatic increase in petty crime. There would be havoc, et cetera. And none of those things has come to bear. The folks what you see in the violent crime statistics are not the people that we're letting out of the facility. In fact, of the many hundred people that we've let out of the facility since COVID started, fewer than 1% of them have returned to incarceration. And so we have been able to use this as an opportunity to fast track some things that we knew would work, and to prove that if those folks could be released during COVID without adding any risks to public safety, they can remain decarcerated after COVID. And we can look at jail beds differently moving forward and really use them to target people who are truly a danger to themselves or to the community, and stop using jail beds for people that we're just annoyed with or we don't know what else to do with them. But who would be much better served if we would take the time to talk to them and connect them to the right services. And we're proud to have been part of being able to have those policies in place, have thought about that ahead of time, so that policymakers could just implement them with the speed that they've been able to do. So,
Well, Michael and Susan and Kevin, I want to get back to you guys on this issue and talk about more things, more positives that have come out of COVID. But Michael, on that issue, it's not just a case of, oh, by the way, we're some folks that are looking to find reasons why people ought not be in jail. At the end of the day, there are plenty of people that ought not be spending time in jail. There are plenty of people who we are incarcerating, who we shouldn't be incarcerating. But on top of the fact that we have people in jail that we shouldn't be incarcerating, it's expensive to incarcerate people.
very.
So if we're incarcerating folks who don't need to be there, one, it's an incredible waste of taxpayer dollars. Two, those are valuable beds. We only have a limited number of beds, and those are valuable beds. That three, during a pandemic, we want as few people in there as we can possibly get in there, because those are few. We're limiting the exposure of potential people being sick. We can go on and on all afternoon.
And the cycle of that,
why.
and the cycle of that, Commissioner, plays into everybody who's on this call. If we incarcerate, let's say, a gentleman who need not necessarily be incarcerated, but we incarcerate him and he loses his job because of that, he now may be incapable of paying his child support.
That's exactly right.
His child and that child's other parent or caregiver may be unable to make the rent, and they may be evicted, and they may find themselves in need of using the shelter system. So it's not just as simple as a one-to-one type relationship. And the damage that's done to a child by removing a parent from the home for whatever reason, stays with that child for a very long time. And so if dad is incarcerated when he truly doesn't need to be, that is a tremendous negative impact on that child. Every time that child goes to visit dad and comes home, experts say it's like going to dad's funeral multiple times. You see him and then you lose him, and then you see him and then you lose him. So there are far more impacts here than just looking at the, oh, well, yeah, we're going to, okay, let's leave him there for a few days. Nothing really bad's going to happen. This is a massive impact all around when you think of this from a social justice and a racial equity lens. We must absolutely look at that. And I think that if COVID has done anything, it has enabled us to shine that light very brightly, the same way that the opioid crisis allowed us to shine the light on the fact that addiction is a disease and not a character flaw. And it became something that impacted everyone and not just a few of those people in that neighborhood. And so we're looking at those things differently. But hopefully there are some silver linings that we will keep. I think that a challenge for all of us is to maintain that proactive view and to guard against a prematurely thinking that everything's going to return back to normal faster than it really is, and prematurely thinking that it's okay to start arresting more folks, or it's okay to start going back to this type of behavior or that type of behavior, when it's really not. We could find ourselves right back here again in a worse situation. But those are the things that we're learning right now, and we're incredibly proud to not only have done that, but to be one of the jurisdictions that has not slipped back into its pre-COVID behavior by now. Many of our colleagues were able to decarcerate a great number of people in March, but in July, we're arresting at February levels again, thinking that this was over. It's not over, Commissioner.
Before we run out of time, I want to get to Susan and Mike, or to Susan and Kevin here real quick. But Michael, where are we today on or roughly? I'm not sure you have this number at your fingertips at the moment, although you are sitting in your office. Where are we today on jail population?
1510.
1510. And where were we when the pandemic started?
1970.
1970. And at one point we got down to below 1,300. Correct?
We did get down to below 1,300 at one point, and there are some issues regarding why those numbers are back up a little bit. One of which is that the state prison system is not letting us send people who've been sentenced to prison, not letting us send them to prison because of COVID issues, and so they're staying with us longer than they might otherwise, and a few other things. But we are going to hold that line, Commissioner. You have our word. We are going to hold that line.
We need to, and we need to continue to figure out ways to decrease the jail population. But great stuff. Sorry. Now, Kevin, Susan, what other positives have come from this pandemic in your mind, or from your agency's perspective, or otherwise?
Kevin, I'll defer to you if you'd like to go first.
Oh, thanks, Susan. For us, it's been innovation. When the lockdown started in mid-March, we were 2 weeks away from conducting an in-person training for 40 volunteers. And it all came to a screeching halt. And naively, like a lot of folks, we were hoping it would be a short-lived situation. But a couple of weeks later, we realized it wasn't. And so our team went to work and developed protocols for our volunteers to conduct virtual visits with our children, and changed our in-person training into a totally online process. And we had a training that just completed last week. We, in 2 sessions, were in 22 new volunteers. The remainder of that class of 40 from March are going to begin studying here in a few weeks. That class is already full now with a total of 30 people, and we've got another training coming up in October. And so, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and we needed to reinvent, and our team was able to do that. So it's been a creative time around the office.
So I agree with both of you, Michael. From the standpoint of we absolutely see the domino effect of incarceration. I'm very grateful that, we as directors work so collaboratively and understand the cause and effect of all of our programs. From a child perspective, it's kind of the same reason why the child support program no longer uses wanted posters, because, what you do to a child's parent has an impact on their self-esteem, on their behavior, on their mental health. So, to the extent where we should, we really do need to take a critical lens at, our programs and improve them where we can. So, and then also, I also agree with the innovation comments. If somebody would have told me 6 months ago that we would have had we would be developing a telework program for our staff, and the way that we're doing it, I nothing ever happens that fast in government. So, we're challenging ourselves and surprising ourselves too at the same time, and what we've been able to do. again, with the support of our county. But from a client perspective, we're really rethinking how we communicate with the mass amount of parents that we interact with. We find that they're adapting to communicating with us virtually. In our parenting classes, we see better attendance because clients don't have to figure out transportation or daycare. We're seeing much more open communication over the phone and via virtual meetings because clients are not in an unknown location or an intimidating environment. The court system can be a very intimidating place for people and parents and our clients. So it all leads to more in-depth and more productive conversations with our clients.
Well, thank you guys. We need to start wrapping up here. I wanted to, I wanted to let Susan know that Mark Russell is thanking you for your comments, very useful comments for him in particular. I also wanted to let folks know and understand, our viewers know and understand, when we're talking about lowering the jail population by allowing, and certainly Michael or any of our guests can chime in here, but lowering the jail population by letting nonviolent offenders out and folks out, we are not talking about just opening the doors and letting anybody out. We are talking about making certain that people who do not belong in jail, offenders who shouldn't be there because their offenses are not of the type that need to be behind bars, shouldn't be spending time there and taking up a bed or a jail cell that shouldn't be there, number one. And number two, during this time of pandemic, when we want to make sure that the jail population is as low as it possibly can be so that we limit the possibility of people being infected in a congregate setting, that is what we're talking about doing here. I know that there was some conversation apparently on the Facebook about who we were letting out and why. We are very careful and very measured about who it is that's being let out and why they're being let out. And certainly anybody that needs to be in jail is still in jail. We weren't just letting folks out for no apparent reason. And Michael Daniels is the first person to make certain that if somebody belongs in jail, they stay there. But if somebody does not belong in jail, he'd be their biggest advocate to get them out.
There are people who are dangerous. There are people who are who will do harm to their community if they are not incarcerated. And those folks, I'm the first person to make sure that we are not advocating for their release and that they are protected from causing further havoc. But I'm also the first person to say that being homeless, being addicted, being mentally ill, being poor is not a crime. And we should not be treating those things as though they are crimes. We should be treating them as though they are what they are. And those are social afflictions and diseases, and that we need to step in and offer treatment opportunities. And we are not locking people up because they have diabetes. We should not be locking people up because they're addicted to heroin. That's the bottom line on that.
We should be getting folks the appropriate help that they need for those type of things, and getting them that help in the Franklin County Jail is not. Getting them that help is not there.
That's right. That is the least practical and most expensive place to get them help.
That's exactly right. And if the taxpayers of Franklin County knew how much we're paying for them to be there, when we could be paying a lot less for them to get the proper services someplace else, they'd be glad that we're doing what we're doing.
That's right. I agree, Commissioner.
All right. So let's close this thing out by saying thank you to the three of you for being with me today. I've enjoyed this far more than you know. So in closing, you can find, again, for how many times I've said this, but you can find all this information not only by checking back in with Facebook Live, but also you can go to commissioners.franklincountyohio.gov, and all the information, all the websites, all the information that we talked about can be found there. You can also learn more about the Child Support Enforcement Agency at support.franklincountyohio.gov. Learn more about justice policy and programs at jpp.franklincountyohio.gov. And you can learn more about the court-appointed special advocates at CASA, C-A-S-A, .franklincountyohio.gov. We'll continue hosting these commissioners' conversations, so keep watching for details. We always post the information on our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Nextdoor. Of course, we want to reach as many of our residents as possible, so if you're talking to friends and neighbors, tell them about streaming conversations like these on a regular basis and posting them to our website. Until next time, I'm John O'Grady, President of the Board of Franklin County Commissioners, along with my guest, Franklin County Director of Survivor Services, Michael Daniels. I'm sorry, the Director of Franklin County Survivor Services, Kevin Greenwood. Michael Daniels, Director of Justice Policy and Programs, and Susan Brown, Director of Child Support Enforcement Agency. All three of them wonderful human beings and wonderful at their jobs. We want to thank you for joining us. We hope that this was helpful and useful. Keep watching for other information on these sessions, which will be announced soon. We generally do them every Thursday. And so remember, we're all in this together, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you very much.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe, everybody.